Do you really think someone like him deserves to work here? Patricia Sullivan, owner of the elegant craft bakery Sunset Bakery, observed through the glass showcase while Miguel Reyes, 23, carefully swept the sidewalk in front of the establishment. The conversation took place during the morning peak hours, when local entrepreneurs and socialites ranked to buy the famous French croissants and specialty coffees that cost Miguel an entire week as outsourced janitor. "Frankly, Patricia, you should reconsider the cleaning company you hire," whispered Victoria Hartwell, president of the Maple Street Traders Association. "People like that, well, you understand, they just don't match the image we're trying to build in this neighborhood." Miguel listened to each word through the ajar door, but kept his neutral expression as he continued his work. "I had learned from a child in the Philippines that dignity did not depend on the recognition of others, especially people who never needed to choose between paying the rent or buying food." 3 months earlier, he had arrived in the United States with nothing but a backpack, an accounting diploma that no one recognized, and his cousin Carlos's promise that any honest work is better than no work. The reality was harder than its most pessimistic expectations. Sunset Bakery represented everything he couldn't have access: decorated cakes that cost $80, $25 gourmet sandwiches, an audience who spent casually at a meal the equivalent of what he saved in 2 weeks, sleeping on the tight sofa of the apartment that divided with 4 other immigrants. "Miguel!" Patricia shouted from the door, interrupting her thoughts. "When I finished out there, I need you to clean the bathrooms again." There was a complaint about the smell. It was the 3rd time that week she invented non-existent problems just to humiliate him publicly, before customers. Miguel nodded politely, keeping for himself the knowledge that he had cleaned those bathrooms impeccably just 2 hours earlier. At that moment, something captured his attention on the corner of the street. A 7-year-old child, sitting on the cold floor, watched with hungry eyes the customers come in and get out of the bakery carrying bags full of delights she could never have. The scene touched something deep in Miguel, reminding him of his own hungry nights as a child in Manila. During the lunch break, Miguel walked to the nearest convenience store and spent his last $5 on a simple bread and a bottle of water. It was literally everything he had until the next payment, but seeing that hungry child brought him 2 painful memories to ignore. When he returned to the street, the girl was still there. Miguel approached calmly and offered bread, watching his eyes illuminated with gratitude that broke his heart. She devoured the food as if she hadn't eaten for days, and Miguel realized that it was probably exactly that. What he didn't know was that from Sunset Bakery's 2nd-floor window, someone had observed the whole scene with increasing interest. A middle-aged man that Patricia treated absolute reverence whenever she appeared, but no one really knew. He took the phone and made a discreet call, speaking low in a language that few in the region could identify. "Find everything about this boy," he said in perfect Tagalog. "Full name, family history, education, everything, and do it discreetly." Miguel returned to work without knowing that his simple action of kindness had triggered a chain of events that would change his life forever. Patricia continued with her malicious comments. Privileged customers kept their eyes of contempt, but something was moving behind the scenes that none of them could predict. As he pretended not to hear the malicious laughs from the interior of the bakery, Miguel smiled discreetly. Sometimes the most underestimated people are exactly those who keep the most powerful secrets, and he was about to find that true generosity never goes unnoticed by those who really matter. If you have already felt the weight of prejudice and discrimination, you know how each act of kindness becomes an act of resistance. Subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple gesture of compassion would trigger a turnaround that would leave the entire Maple Street elite completely speechless. For the next 2 weeks, Patricia Sullivan's hostility cast from whispered comments to open humiliation. She started inventing non-existent problems just to draw clients' attention to Miguel's defects, as if he were a defective piece in his luxury collection. "Miguel," she shouted in full at lunchtime, when the bakery was crowded with executives and socialites. "You broke my cup of French porcelain. This piece cost $300. Miguel looked at the cup perfectly intact in his hands, then to Patricia, who held another identical, with a clearly old crack. Customers stopped talking, creating embarrassing silence as they watched the scene. "Madam, I didn't break anything," Miguel said calmly, his firm but respectful voice. "This cup was already cracked when I got it. Are you calling me a liar?" Patricia raised her voice theatrically, ensuring that everyone listens. "In front of my clients? This is exactly the kind of behavior I expected from someone. So, the word 'thus' was suspended in the air as poison." Victoria Hartwell, always present in the moments of drama, shook her head with performic disapproval. "Patricia, honey, I warned you about hiring this type of person. They just don't have the same discipline." Miguel felt the warmth of the humiliation climb through the neck, but kept the composure. He had learned from the streets of Manila that reacting to provocation only gave more power to the provocative. Moreover, something in his expression suggested that he was mentally cataloging every word, every gesture, as if collecting evidence for a future judgment. "Discount my next 3 salaries," Miguel said simply, surprising everyone. "No problem." Patricia blinked, clearly not expecting this answer. He had prepared for a discussion to justify a dramatic resignation, but Miguel had turned his trap into an unexpected moment of dignity. That night, in the small apartment he shared with other immigrants, Miguel called his mother in Manila through an unstable internet connection. The conversation was expensive, but some things were necessary. "Miguel, anak, are you okay? Your voice sounds different," she said in Tagalog, maternal worry crossing oceans. "I'm fine, nanay. Just learning that the world here has its own rules." Miguel looked out the window to Maple Street's bright lights, where people like Patricia lived without ever questioning if they deserved what they had. "Remember what your lolo always said? Ang taong mabait, laging pinagpapala ng Diyos." Good people are always blessed by God, but patience was becoming increasingly difficult. The next day, Miguel found that Patricia had spread stories about her aggressiveness and lack of reliability for other Maple Street traders. 3 weekend job opportunities evaporated, even before he could apply. "It's a shame," said Mrs. Anderson, owner of the boutique of flowers. "I really needed help, but Patricia told me about the incidents. I can't risk it." The strategy was clear, isolating Miguel financially until it had no choice but to leave the neighborhood. But what Patricia didn't know was that her cruel tactics were being observed by someone who understood exactly what was happening. From the second floor of Sunset Bakery, the mysterious man continued his silent observations. He had asked for detailed reports about Miguel and was impressed with what he found. A degree in accounting from the University of Manila with honors, experience in small business management, fluent in 4 languages, and an unshakable reputation for honesty in his home community. More importantly, investigations revealed something that made man smile with genuine admiration. Miguel was not just a desperate immigrant accepting any job. He had a detailed plan. Work, save, study at night to revalidate his diploma, and eventually open his own business. Current humiliation was temporary, but its determination was permanent. "Sir, we got more information," said his assistant, discreetly entering the makeshift office. "The boy is enrolled in a night course of administration at the community university. Perfect grades so far. And financially, sends half of all that wins to the family in the Philippines. The mother is sick, needs expensive medicines. Still, he can still save 15% of the salary." The man nodded, thoughtful. It was exactly the kind of character he was looking for. But before acting, he needed to be absolutely sure. The starving child's test had just been the beginning. Meanwhile, Miguel continued to face Patricia's systematic humiliation campaign. She had begun to forget to pay her overtime, to criticize her work in front of customers, and even suggest that he was stealing small store items. "I'm sure there were 5 croissants last night," she said loudly during lunchtime. "Now there are only 3. Miguel, you were the last to clean the showcase." The silence in the bakery was deafening. Miguel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all his eyes on him. It was the moment that Patricia had carefully orchestrated, the final trap to justify her dismissal with just cause. But instead of despair or anger, something more dangerous shone in Miguel's eyes. An absolute calm that comes only from who knows that your innocence will be proved, not by words but by concrete evidence that your accusers do not even imagine that there are. "Mrs. Patricia," said Miguel, his voice clear and firm. "Do you have security cameras, don't you? Why don't we check yesterday night's recordings?" Patricia's face paled. She had completely forgotten the cameras, so focused on her theatrical performance. More importantly, she knew exactly where those 2 missing croissants were, in the refrigerator of their own home, taken to dinner the night before. What no one at Sunset Bakery knew was that this moment of tension was being observed by eyes that understood exactly the value of integrity under pressure, and that very soon, Miguel's life would change in a way that would make Patricia's cruelty look like a small obstacle on the way to something extraordinary. But first, he needed to survive what Patricia was planning as her final blow, an accusation that would be impossible to refute, and that would permanently destroy him. At least that's what she thought, not knowing that she was about to find out why she underestimated certain people is always a fatal mistake. That night, in the tight apartment he shared with other immigrants, Miguel opened his old laptop and began to do something that Patricia would never imagine. He was not just suffering in silence, he was documenting everything meticulously, as he did with the accounting books in the Philippines. Each racist commentary, every public humiliation, every extra paid hour was being registered with an accountant accuracy in a detailed spreadsheet. dates, times, witnesses present, even customer reactions. Miguel had learned early on that numbers don't lie, and now she was turning her experience into irrefutable data. "Kuya Miguel, you should look for another job," said his apartment companion, Carlos, watching him work late again. "This woman is destroying you." "No, cousin," Miguel replied without taking his eyes off the screen. "She's destroying herself, just don't know yet." What Carlos didn't know was that Miguel had discovered something interesting about Sunset Bakery through online public records. The company had several open labor violations, taxes late with the city hall, and curiously, 3 cases for discrimination that had been silently resolved in the last 2 years. Most importantly, Miguel had identified standards. Patricia was not just cruel to him. There was a clear history of hostility specifically directed to immigrant or black employees. Records showed suspicious turnover. Fired by just cause staff had always a common feature. The next morning, the situation climbed beyond anything Miguel had experienced. Patricia arrived visibly annoyed, apparently pressured by something or someone employees didn't know. "Miguel," she shouted even before he finished sweeping the entrance. "I need to talk to you, now." In the makeshift office at the back of the bakery, Patricia positioned herself behind the table as a judge about to give a sentence. His expression was colder than Miguel had ever seen. "There were several complaints about you," she started, consulting a role that she had clearly just written. "Aggressive attitude with clients, poor work, questioning authority. I am being very generous in not immediately fired." Miguel looked at her with the same calm she had used by recording each of these lies in her documentation. "What kind of specific complaints?" "Don't question my decisions." Patricia hit her hand on the table, her civility mask finally falling completely. "Do you immigrants think you can come here and demand the same rights as people who built this country? This is my establishment, and I decide who deserves to work here." There it was. Miguel's confession had patiently waited for months, and the little recorder in his pocket had captured each poisonous word. "I understand perfectly," said Miguel, his voice keeping the same professional calm that irritated Patricia so much. "Can I have it in writing?" "Of course you can," she scribbled furiously on a roll. "Last warning of inadequate attitude and authority questioning. A word out of place and you're on the street." That afternoon, Miguel received a call that would change everything. Dr. Esra Chen, a lawyer who specializes in labor rights, had been nominated by an immigrant support organization that Miguel had discreetly contacted weeks earlier. "Mr. Reyes, I analyzed the documentation you sent," she said during the meeting in her simple but professional office. "What you have collected is extraordinary. I rarely see such meticulous evidence in cases like this." Miguel opened his folder, revealing months of work organized with the accuracy of an experienced auditor. Detailed spreadsheets, audio recordings, even discrete photographs of moments of discrimination, all cataloged and cross-referenced. "This is not just a case of harassment at work," Dr. Chen continued, examining the documents. "It's a systematic pattern of racial and national discrimination. And with this evidence, well, let's say Sunset Bakery has serious legal problems ahead." But Miguel had something more in mind than just sue Patricia. He had discovered that the mysterious man on the second floor was Antonio Delgado, a Philippine businessman who owns a restaurant chain that was discreetly evaluating Maple Street investment opportunities. "Dr. Chen," said Miguel, his eyes shining with an intensity that the lawyer had not yet seen, "what if I told you that I know someone who may not only punish Patricia, but turn this whole situation much bigger?" During the lunch break, Miguel did something that surprised even Carlos. Instead of eating the simple sandwich he brought from home, he walked to a Philippine restaurant across the city and asked to speak to the manager. "I need to send a message to Mr. Antonio Delgado," he said in perfect Tagalog. "Tell him that Sunset Bakery would like a conversation. He'll know what it is about." The answer came faster than expected. That same night, Miguel received an invitation for a coffee at the town's more elegant hotel. It was time to find out if his suspicions about the mysterious observer were right. While preparing for the meeting that could change her life, Miguel looked in the mirror and saw something different. It was no longer the desperate young man who had arrived in the United States months earlier. It was someone who had learned to turn injustice into strategy, humiliation into determination. Patricia had made the classic error of every arrogant oppressor. She had completely underestimated her victim. But Miguel had not been a victim for a long time. He was a patient strategist who had spent months building a case that would not only legally destroy it, but also professionally. What Patricia did not know was that every insult had been a piece of evidence. Every humiliation had been a step in a much larger plan, and that the young Philippine she had tried to break was about to show that true strength does not scream. She documents, plans, and performs with surgical accuracy. The next morning, while Patricia organized one more of her cruel performances to humiliate Miguel in front of mourning customers. She had no idea she was about to find out why she belittles determined and intelligent people is always a mistake that costs much more expensive than any wounded pride would ever be worth. The Grand Hotel meeting took place in a private suite on the top floor, with panoramic views of Maple Street. Antonio Delgado was not only the mysterious observer, he was the president of the Self Restaurant Group, one of the largest crime chains on the West Coast, estimated at $50 million. Miguel Feel, said Antonio in fluent Tagalog, gesturing to a leather armchair in front of a document-covered table. I have observed you for weeks. Every act of kindness, every moment of dignity under pressure, every evidence of character you have shown. Miguel felt his heart accelerate. Lord, I don't understand. Yes, Antonio smiled, opening a folder with the logo of his company. You are a trained accountant, speak 4 languages, have experience in small business management, and more important, has something money does not buy: absolute integrity. The proposal was as unexpected as transformative. Antonio was planning to open his first branch on the East Coast, specifically at Maple Street, and needed a regional manager who understood both Philippine and American market. The starting salary would be $75,000 annually. More profit sharing, explained Antonio, observing Miguel's shock expression. But there is one condition. I want you to stay at Sunset Bakery for 2 more weeks, documenting everything Patricia does. Each act of discrimination will be crucial evidence for what we plan. What do you plan? Miguel asked, although part of him already knew the answer. Justice. Complete in public. Antonio opened another document. Patricia doesn't know, but I'm the new owner of the building where Sunset Bakery is. I bought it yesterday through an outsourced company. She is renting space from someone who witnessed every racist insult who addressed you. The second week at Sunset Bakery was like living in a trap that Patricia had created for herself. Each cruel comment, every humiliation invented, every moment of discrimination was being recorded by security cameras that she didn't even know existed, discreetly installed by Antonio. Miguel, Patricia shouted on Friday afternoon, in front of a hall full of happy hour customers. You're going too slow on purpose. You're trying to sabotage my business because you know you don't deserve to be here. Mrs. Patricia, Miguel answered calmly. I'm working at the same pace as always. Don't answer me, she exploded, her mask of civility finally shattering completely. You and all your people think they can come here and demand the same rights as us. This is America, not your miserable Philippines. The silence in the hall was absolute. Customers stopped talking, some discreetly recording with cell phones. Victoria Hartwell, present as always in the moments of drama, shook her head approvingly. Exactly, Patricia. Finally someone said what we all think. Victoria added poisonously. These people need to know their place. Miguel smiled internally. Each word had been captured in high-quality audio and video, but the final blow was yet to come. Mrs. Patricia, said Miguel, his voice keeping the same professional calm that irritated her so much. I would like to introduce you to someone. At that moment, Antonio Delgado entered Sunset Bakery, accompanied by Dr. Sarah Chen and a bailiff. Patricia paled by recognizing the man who had observed discreetly for weeks. Patricia Sullivan, said the officer, extending a sealed envelope. You are being notified of process by racial discrimination, bullying, and violation of federal labor laws. What? Who are you? Patricia stammered, her hands shaking when receiving the documentation. I'm Antonio Delgado, his new owner, Antonio answered coldly. And this young man you so despise has just become my regional manager. Miguel, would you like to give the news to Mrs. Patricia? Miguel took a deep breath, savoring every word. Mrs. Patricia, your rental contract is being terminated for breach of conduct clauses. You have 30 days to vacate the property. Patricia's face went through all the stages of the shock. This is impossible. I have rights. I have a contract. I had, corrected Dr. Chen, opening his folder. Until you commit systematic discrimination against employees. We have recordings, witnesses, and sufficient documentation for criminal and civil proceedings. Victoria Hartwell tried to leave discreetly, but Antonio intercepted her. Ah, Mrs. Hartwell, you also need to see that. He turned on his tablet, showing a video of her last racist comment. As president of the Association of Traders, I believe your colleagues would like to know about their true opinions. This was taken out of context, Victoria protested, but her voice betrayed panic. Context? Miguel finally spoke, his voice echoing for Sunset Bakery silent. The context is that you thought they could humiliate someone based on prejudice and origin. The context is that they completely underestimated who I really am. Patricia collapsed in a chair, finally understanding the extension of her defeat. The young Philippine she had tortured for months was not just a victim. She was an experienced accountant, She said 4 languages, and now she would occupy a position of power she would never achieve. In 2 weeks, Antonio has announced for everyone present, this space will become Kamayan Filipino Cuisine, our newest restaurant. Miguel will be the manager, and we will be hiring local employees who share our values of respect and dignity for all. As Patricia signed the termination papers with humiliation tears, Miguel looked around Sunset Bakery for the last time as an employee. Soon, he would return as a owner, transforming a place of discrimination into a symbol of inclusion and immigrant success. But the most important transformation had already happened within it. It was no longer the desperate young man who accepted any humiliation. It was someone who had learned that true revenge is not to destroy the enemy. It is overcoming him so completely that his own arrogance becomes the instrument of his fall. 6 months after Patricia Sullivan's public humiliation, Maple Street's transformation was almost unrecognizable. Where before there was discrimination disguised as sophistication, a truly inclusive community was now thriving. Kamayan Filipino cuisine became the most popular orante in the region, with reserves scheduled in advance. Miguel, now wearing impeccable suits but never losing humility, administered not only the establishment, but the whole strategy of expanding the small restaurant group on the East Coast. "Mr. Reyes," said Channel 7 news reporter, positioning herself in front of the crowded restaurant, "your story inspired thousands of people. How do you feel when you see this transformation?" "Gratitude," Miguel answered calmly, the same serenity that irritated Patricia now radiating genuine confidence. "Gratitude for the opportunity to prove what character has no nationality, and success does not choose skin color or accent." The report showed impressive numbers. Kamayan had created 35 local jobs, with salaries 40% above the regional average. Miguel had implemented a scholarship program for children of immigrants, sponsoring university studies for young people who, like him, just needed an opportunity. Patricia, in turn, had become an example of how arrogance and prejudice can destroy a lifetime in a matter of months. Without Sunset Bakery space and facing lawsuits that drained their economies, she was forced to sell her home in the exclusive Riverside Drive. "Irony is perfect," Carlos commented to Miguel during a visit. "She who talked about people as we don't belong here now works as a waitress in a restaurant across town." But Miguel had learned that the real victory was not in the fall of Patricia, but in the elevation of his own community. Kamayan's success had attracted other immigrants run by Maple Street, creating an economic ecosystem that benefited everyone. Victoria Hartwell, the former president of the Trader Association, had resigned from disgrace after the video of her racist comments circular on social networks. His substitute, Maria Santos, sister of one of Kamayan's employees, implemented inclusion policies that completely transformed the culture of the neighborhood. "Miguel," said Antonio Delgado during the opening of the chain's second restaurant in the region, "you have transformed not only a business, but a mindset. This is worth more than any profit." The ceremony happened exactly where the old Sunset Bakery was. In place of showcases full of inaccessible products, there were now community tables where families of all origins shared meals and stories. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had become one of the most respected lawyers in the region specializing in labor rights, used the Patricia Sullivan versus Miguel Reyes as a case study at universities across the country. This case proves that meticulous documentation and intelligent strategy are more powerful than any cry of indignation, she explained to students. Miguel not only won, he turned injustice into an opportunity for an entire community. That night, Miguel called his mother in Manila through the new high-speed connection he could pay comfortably. She cried to see the pictures of the restaurant, the manager uniform, the spacious apartment he had rented. "Anak, your Lolo would be so proud," she said in Tagalog, holding the phone with hands that no longer trembled. "You have proven that kindness and hard work always win." "Nanay, now I can bring you and Tatay to visit," Miguel answered, looking out the window to the illuminated Maple Street. "I want you to see with their own eyes that the American dream still exists for those who are willing to work for it." The last time Miguel saw Patricia was in a supermarket on the cheapest side of the city. She seemed to have aged a decade in 6 months, carrying generic shopping bags as he passed with the cart full of fresh ingredients to develop the restaurant's new menu. His eyes met for a moment. There was no malicious triumph in Miguel's eyes, only the quiet satisfaction of those who had turned poison into medicine. Patricia quickly diverted her look, as if his silent dignity were more unbearable than any insult. For Miguel had learned the most powerful lesson of all: the best revenge is not to destroy those who tried to destroy you, but to build something so beautiful and successful that their own existence becomes the definitive proof of the moral failure of their oppressors. Today, whenever young immigrants face discrimination at Maple Street, they know there is a place where accents are welcome, where origin is a source of pride, and where honest work is rewarded with dignity and opportunity. The hungry child that Miguel fed that far day now attends free reinforcement classes offered by the restaurant. She does not know that that simple gesture of kindness was the first domino in a chain of transformations that would change lives forever. Patricia tried to humiliate Miguel for being different, but ended up proving that his difference was exactly his greatest strength. Miguel has learned that true revenge is not to stoop to the level of those who hurt you. It is to rise so loud that they become irrelevant, as you become inspiration for everyone who dares to dream beyond the limitations imposed by the prejudice of others. If this story of transformation and justice has touched your heart, subscribe to more narratives that prove that sometimes the darkest moments are just the prelude to the brightest victories.